The Haram Love. This is a romantic tale of an unacceptable or forbidden love affair resulting from racist motives between a free white Arab girl and a black African Negro boy. It was written in English and translated into Arabic by Dr. A. Ahmed. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a tribal system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer who may quote brief passages for a review for printing in a general magazine, a school journal, or a university article. All characters in this love story are fictitious, and any resemblance to real people, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Chapter 47. A philanthropist helps the detained Arab girl. For 3 weeks, the suspected Arab wife in Salah Junaid lived in the squalid Indian woman's prison into which she was thrown, which could more correctly be described as a place of starvation or a death concentration camp. She lived with a short white nightgown on her body and a single shoe on her foot. The single dress that Insaf has on her body for 21 days is a transparent nightgown that belongs to Christina. It reveals her sexy body as if she is half naked. She has no soap to clean her body or wash her dress. She has no toothbrush and no toothpaste. In Indian prison, while a suspect is in remand, he is not entitled to receive anything from the prison authority except 1 meal a day. His family or friends must provide him with these necessities of life. Indian female interrogators brutally tortured Insaf for 3 days. She was forced to confess to a crime she did not commit. She would rather be beaten to death than confess to a crime she did not commit. However, through a harsh interrogation technique they call the third-degree method, Indian police interrogators, who are known as extortioners, can force a suspected person with flesh made of stone to confess to a crime he did not commit. The Arab wife in South always remembers her promise to her African husband Deng to keep their child alive in her womb until she gives birth. In order to break the life of her fetus in her womb, she confessed to committing a drug trafficking crime that she did not commit. A week after that bloody incident with the evil Sudanese student, the foreign defendant in South received a small letter from someone. It is a postcard with a greeting. The person who sent the note did not mention his name or address. He just mentioned that he sympathizes with her and wants to lend a helping hand. With this little letter, Insaf received 10 beautiful dresses, 7 pairs of shoes, a blanket, 2 pillows, soap, toothpaste, a toothbrush, cookies, candies, and 15,000 Indian rupees. The prison administration informed her that she would not be allowed to possess money inside the pre-trial detention facility. She can exchange the money for milk coupons and use them anytime she wants to purchase food or other goods from the prison cafeteria. The Sudanese defendant in South felt great relief after receiving this heavenly manna. She understood that there was at least one person in India who did not view her as a dirty whore and a drug dealer who deserved to be hated and tortured to death. On that day, Insaf took off her old dress, the nightgown of Christina, took a shower, and put on new clothes. She threw into the trash can the dirty, transparent nightgown that the criminal foreign student Christina gave her when she stayed one night in her apartment. Then Insaf ate her meal in the prison cafeteria. By evening, she began to look again like a lotus blossoming among the wild flowers. Foreign female students who had previously avoided it, sitting near her, came to her and tried to win her friendship. Some of them even begged her for some alms. Insaf did not remember their bad attitudes towards her before she received her heavenly manna. So she shared her heavenly care with them with all love and generosity. She also gave 3 abandoned female prisoners some clothes and soap. The next day, Insaf received another postcard. She immediately recognized the handwriting. The sender has not been identified again. He asked her for permission to appoint a lawyer to defend her case. There is a small agreement form attached to the greeting card. She was asked to sign the form and hand it over to the prison authority. The innocent foreign defendant himself gladly agreed to be represented by a lawyer in the Indian criminal court. She felt that she could have a lawyer to defend her case in court and a loving person who had her best interests at heart. The Sudanese accused Insaf continued to receive cards of congratulations and divine providence for 3 months before she appeared before the judge in the Bombay Criminal Court again. At her second appearance, the court issued an official order preventing any foreign student from approaching the court complex. Only foreign students who could prove their close relationship with the suspects were allowed into the courtroom. In addition, the court refused to issue a permit to any student whose relative inside the prison did not agree to visit him. Therefore, the Arab wife Insaf was happy when she entered the criminal court complex and did not see any hostile faces. After taking the attendance, the judge set another date to appear before him in the future. The third session is scheduled to be held in 2 months. The suspects were then escorted to police vehicles. Insaf asked some of the other suspects how long they should wait for the Indian judge to issue his final ruling on them. A suspected Sudanese girl told her that they would likely be put on trial for 3 to 5 years. She became worried that she would give birth to her baby in a woman's prison in a foreign country inside the filthy prison in Bombay City. The foreign Arab wife does not want her firstborn child to learn to crawl, walk, and talk in prison. She does not yet know whether her child is male or female. She hopes to have a boy so she can name him after his late father, Deng, who sacrificed his life for them. Shortly after her second court appearance, the pregnant foreign suspect Insaf was taken to the prison doctor for a pregnancy test. The doctor told her that she would give birth to her baby in 3 weeks. A few weeks later, Insaf received a postcard from the same anonymous benefactor. The dispatcher asked her if she wanted to be granted bail and help her stay out of prison during her trial. The loving charitable donor also stated that he is aware of her due date and of her delivery and hopes that she will deliver her baby in a good hospital. The pregnant defendant gladly received the good news, so she immediately signed her bail and mailed the form to her attorney. A few days later, Insaf was informed that she had been granted bail and that she would be sent to a private hospital to give birth to her firstborn. The next morning, she was transferred by ambulance to Holy Family Hospital. It is a private Catholic Christian hospital in Bombay, but it's open to anyone who can afford it. It so happened that on the same day that Insaf gave birth to a baby boy, It was the same day that her husband Deng underwent a second back spinal surgery at the hospital in London in the United Kingdom. But his wife did not know that he was still alive, and she saw that he was killed and died as a corban sacrifice, a victim of their forbidden love. She is alone when the baby is born. Insaf is very happy when her little boy saw the light of day. She thanked God that her child was not killed inside her womb when those merciless Indian policewomen tortured her during their harsh interrogation for 3 days. She also thanked her God for keeping him alive inside her and not starving to death when she starved for 3 weeks. The one meal she ate daily during those 21 days would not satisfy a child's tummy. It was just a little rice, lentils, and one egg. She knows that thanks to her loving benefactor who took pity on her child was able to live and grow in her womb. She extended her hand and blessed it gently on her baby. She felt close to her baby. She felt Deng's loving touch on her little boy. She remembered her husband and his great love for her. She remembered the painful moments when the two Arab policemen tore them apart. Since then, she did not know what happened to her beloved husband. She is now more inclined to believe that Deng sacrificed his life for her and their child. After giving birth to her firstborn, the new mother in Saf was moved from the delivery room to a private ward. The hospital staff informed her that someone had confined her to a private room for 3 days. The private room is like a five-star hotel room. It is very spacious and has everything inside. It has a large screen TV, a bathroom with toilet, and a large bed. It also has a phone. And Saf wonders who would spend so much money by helping a foreign girl accused of drug smuggling in the best room she has ever seen. She spent more than 3 months in the dirtiest woman's prison in the whole world. But today she stays with her child in the most beautiful room in India. She had slept for 3 months on the hard floor inside Arsa Road Women's Prison. But now she was lying comfortably on a large bed. Most of the Indian female suspects and guards suffer from xenophobia, and hence they hate the suspected foreign girls and beat them with or without reason. While in prison, 2 African suspected girls were killed during the night by some Indian female suspect and convicts for unknown reasons. Therefore, Insaf hoped that she would not be able to return to that hostile environment. She thanked God because due to her white skin color and long hair, the Indian female guards and suspects and convicts saw that she was an Indian girl like them. This misunderstood identity probably made them not to hate and beat her as they did to other black African female suspects. But the new mother in Saf began to worry about her next step. She knows she has been released on bail and can stay free somewhere outside the prison until the criminal court sentences her. But where can she go after 3 days with this little baby boy? She cannot expect Sudanese students to help her because of what they think of her. She wished that her 3 days in the private Christian hospital would be extended to 3 years. Unfortunately, good days always pass faster than unpleasant days. On the fourth day, the patient itself was told that she would be discharged from the hospital at noon. As she was thinking about her next move, an idea came to her mind. She decided to return to the women's prison in Bombay and raise her child there. So she finally decided to cancel her bail and return to her former hellish, crowded abode in the women's prison. At least there, she and her child can have shelter and food. However, Insaf wonders how she can carry her 3-day-old baby and walk through the crowded streets of Bombay. She's afraid that the cars, smoke, and pollution of India's largest cosmopolitan city will suffocate her little boy to death. Moreover, she remembered that the distance between the hospital and the women's prison was too far for her to walk. Then the mother of the newborn ate her last meal in her private room at Holy Family Hospital and breastfed her child. Next, she wrapped her baby boy in a large white sheet, changed it out of her hospital uniform, and got dressed. She carried a small bag in one hand and her child in the other. She left her temporary security shelter and began walking inside the hospital complex. While she was walking down the hospital stairs, the foreign defendant Insaf suddenly heard a woman's voice calling her name. This woman said in a polite voice, "Excuse me, Mrs. Insaf Salah al-Junaid." A Sudanese mother who had recently given birth turned her face and saw two Indian women hurriedly approaching her. One of the women is in her early 60s, and the other is a beautiful young girl. Each of them is wearing a very rich and beautiful Indian sari. Their faces are calm, they're smiling and eager to receive her, greet her, and talk to her. As soon as they reach her, the older woman hugged Insaf and then kissed her baby. Then the older Indian woman said politely, "I'm Mrs. Matthew, and this is my daughter-in-law, Lillian." Insaf extended her hand to Lillian and also shook hands with Mrs. Matthew. Then Mrs. Matthew asked it very respectfully, "Would you mind coming with us to the waiting room?" "I don't mind that at all, Auntie," Insaf said calmly. The new mother then silently followed the two Indian women as they escorted her to the waiting room. The two women occupied a sofa next to a handsome young Indian boy who seemed to be their relative. Then the three asked Insaf to sit near them. "This is my son, Mark," Mrs. Matthew said as she placed her right hand on the shoulder of the boy. "He is Lillian's husband," the Indian mother continued. Insaf looked shyly at Mark and smiled at him. "He is a handsome young Indian man with an athletic body like a basketball player. He reminded her of her African lover Deng, who was an excellent basketball player in Sudan. Mark is 2 years older than his Indian wife Lillian. He is tall and has a good build." "Hello, Insaf," Mark said with a smile. The Sudanese wife replied, "Hello, Mark. I can speak Arabic shwaya shwaya, or a little bit." He said this sentence in Arabic. Mark spends at least a month every year in the Arab Gulf countries. He also said, "I have many Sudanese friends there." Insaf smiled again at him but did not say anything. "Insaf, Mark is the anonymous Indian charitable benefactor who has been helping you all this time during your stay in the women's prison in the Bombay Arsa Road jail," Mrs. Matthew said, looking at her son's face. "We came to know about you through the Sudanese Christian boy Atem. When we decided to help you, we faced some objections from our church leaders and members. The church leaders did not mind if we helped the African defendant Atem. They know that Atem is a good Christian student and a respectable boy. But in your case, they wanted us to be careful. Despite our church warning, my son Mark insisted that we must help you. And so far, we have done so. Mark said, "Yes, Insaf. Let me first tell you why I decided to help you. I was there in the criminal court complex when that evil Sudanese student insulted you. And I hear and understood all the bad words he used against you, which promoted you to hit him with your high heel and blind his left eye. I saw you when another Sudanese young man pushed you down. I also saw you when you fell to the ground and your private body was exposed. To be honest with you, I did not like the way you dressed that day. After that, I spoke to the accused Sudanese boy Atem and asked him about you. He told me that the Indian narcotics police officers did not allow you to change your nightgown and put on your clothes on the day of your mass arrest in Christina's apartment. This is one of the strong reasons I decided to help you. And the second reason, which is the main reason I decided to help you, is your reaction to the dirty insults of that bad Sudanese boy. I understood that if you were truly a prostitute and a drug dealer, as he told you, you would not have reacted in such a violent way by hitting your attacker in the face with your high heel shoe and gouging out his left eye. Before the Arab mother who gave birth to her first born 3 days ago could deliver a speech of thanks to Mark, his wife Lilian asked her, "Now, Insaf, can you tell us what you plan to do after leaving the hospital with your newborn child?" The homeless Sudanese girl said while crying, I don't know anyone in this city or anywhere else in India. I have no place to go but prison." When she said those sad words, Mrs. Matthew and Mrs. Lillian wiped some tears from their eyes as well. "But I bail you out of jail," Mark said. "The prison authority will not retain you unless you refuse bail. At least prison is safer than the streets. On top of that, my firstborn is just a baby born 3 days ago." The sad Sudanese mother said those words in a crying voice, tears falling from her eyes like drops of heavy rain. Then Mrs. Matthew approached her, sat near her and hugged her tightly. "Don't say those words again, my daughter Insaf. I'm a mother like you, and I have 1 son and 3 daughters." Mrs. Matthew continued while crying, "I cannot leave a young mother-daughter your age and a baby like your son wandering the streets or back to prison." Mark said seriously after interrupting his mother's heartbreaking words, "Listen, Insaf, we are willing to provide you with further assistance, but we want to make sure that we will not get into trouble with the law. We want you to tell us how you got involved in the drug trafficking charge." Before the Sudanese girl had a chance to respond to Mark's direct question, his wife Lillian said with a lot of respect, "Insaf, even if you were not living a good life before today, we can still help you if you are willing to mend your wrong ways and stay away from the company of those bad African students who implicated you in the drug trafficking." The suspected Sudanese girl quickly said while crying, "I was not a bad woman when I was in Sudan, and I was not involved in any wrong activities considered against the law when I came to India. Wherever I went, people were blackmailing me, accusing me, and getting me into legal trouble. I had no hand in the drug trafficking for which I was arrested in this country. Mark asked in amazement, "So, this means that you think you are an innocent girl of that drug charge?" "I'm completely innocent of the accusation that some sons and daughters of my motherland have implicated me in, and I do not know which of them is innocent and which one is guilty. I don't even know what drugs look like in their form." "Then how did you end up in Christina's apartment where you were arrested?" Mar asked seriously. "Christina is my husband's cousin," Lilian quickly asked. "So, you are a married girl and you did not get pregnant and give birth to a child outside of wedlock as people thought of you?" "Yes, I'm a Muslim woman, married in a legal Islamic marriage. My nikah contract was with my Muslim husband was performed in the mosque in Khartoum city." Mrs. Matthew asked, "Where is your Muslim husband now?" "He is still in Sudan. He was shot by a policeman on the same day we were supposed to travel together from Sudan to India." "Why did the police shoot him?" Lilian and Mrs. Matthew asked in unison. "Because they accused us of violating the Sharia law through cohabitation and having haram sex or un-Islamic sexual intercourse." Mar said, "Okay, Insaf, don't hesitate to tell us your whole life story from the time you were in Sudan until you were arrested in India and accused of drug smuggling with those 7 foreign African students." Then the suspected Arab girl, Insaf Salah al-Junaid, told her sad, forbidden love story since she fell in love with the African boy Dane and why she fled from her Arab family's home until a police officer shot her husband in Sudan. She told about her tragic involvement in drug smuggling charge and her quarrel with the Sudanese student in the criminal court complex who insulted her in the most horrific terms and accused her of many lies, which promoted her to hit him with her high heel and gouge out his eye. It took Insaf more than an hour to tell the tragic story of her forbidden love. During that period, Lilian looked down and Mark's eyes wandered here and there, but Mrs. Matthew did not stop looking into the eyes of the foreign accused, even for a single moment. When the Arab wife finished telling her sad life story, Mrs. Matthew was the first to comment on it. "My daughter Insaf, as I told you, I'm a mother like you, and I have 3 daughters. 2 of them got married and had children, and now staying with their husband in separate houses. My youngest daughter, who is almost your age, still lives with me. One thing I have learned from raising them is that they can never fool me. They cleverly try to hide their lies from me, but I could always read them in their eyes. I hear every word you told us about your life story, and I saw it written in your eyes. I'm completely convinced that every word you say about yourself is the truth. For this reason, we welcome you and your infant to come and stay with us in our home until your court case is complete." Chapter 48. Prayer request for the deceased African husband. The Matthew Christian family's decision to shelter the suspected Arab Muslima wife Insaf Salah al-Junaid and her infant child was met with disapproval by their relatives and friends. Some church leaders even advised the family members to keep the suspected Sudanese wife released on bail and her child separate from them in a rented apartment. In addition to their huge residence, Matthew's wealthy family owns another building with 8 apartments. They could easily accommodate Insaf and her child in one of their other apartments or rent a place for her. However, the family members stuck firm to their decision to keep Insaf at their main residence. They are afraid that some Indian miscreants or Bombay gangsters known as Gunda will break into the beautiful Arab girl's apartment at night and gang rape her. India, like any other third world country, a beautiful young woman is always vulnerable and an easy target for rape or sexual harassment by sexually frustrated men. Whenever one of these villains gets the chance to assault a young woman, he will rape her in her home or even on the street in broad daylight. Most of the poor Indian men cannot marry girls, and no young woman can fall in love with any of them. Therefore, the safest place for the beautiful Arab foreign wife in South is to stay with the same loving Christian Indian family that brought her out of the notorious Indian woman's prison. In Matthew's family home, the beautiful married Sudanese girl receives all the love and care a daughter gets from her family. The best medicines, clothing, and nutrition were provided for her baby and herself. Within a few months, Insaf blossomed like a beautiful rose in that loving and well cared for home. Her moral integrity, friendly nature, and physical beauty attract all who approach her. Those Christians who stood against the family's decision initially changed their positions when they were convinced of her innocence. Many Indian Christian families invited her into their homes, listened to her story, and treated her as a brave heroine. Insaf remembered the time she spent with the Coptic Christian family members in Sudan, where she fell in love with their son, William. How she was falsely accused and brutally persecuted when the Christian priest learned that she was in love affair with his Coptic son. The Muslim wife found a big difference between the love of the Indian Christian family and the persecution of the Sudanese Christian family. She is now accused of the most serious crime, which Indians consider more serious than murder, armed robbery, and terrorism. Indians say that the killer kills one person. The Muslim terrorist blow up some people in Smithereens along with him, but the drug dealer kills the entire community. Despite this serious charge, the Christian Indian family trusted her, believed in her innocence, and cared for her as if she were their own daughter. Meanwhile, the trial of the accused mother Insaf and the 7 suspects in the drug smuggling case continued. Every 2 or 3 months, the Arab suspect girl takes her son and goes to the criminal court for a hearing. And at each visit, she is asked to sign her name and go. After a full year had passed, the trial was extended to the following year. The Sudanese wife in South continued to live in Matthew's family home. During this long period, she did not hear any news from her husband then. She still believed that her husband sacrificed his life for her. She always longs for his love. She named her son after his father because she saw in that little boy his loving father then. Insaf never forgot those wonderful days she spent with her husband in their small nest in the shanty town of the Al-Ishash neighborhood on the outskirts of Khartoum. At the same time, the Arab wife kept herself away from the North Sudanese students in Bombay. She always remembered that fateful day when they falsely accused her of being a drug dealer and a dirty prostitute. That bitter experience prevents her from even greeting them or when she meets them anywhere. But these Sudanese Muslim students envy her stunning beauty and the expensive clothes she often wears. Somehow, they found her comfortable livelihood and spread bad rumors about her. They accuse her of selling her religion and conscience. They call her an apostate Muslimah, boycotted her socially, and threatened to deprive and boycott any student who associated with her. However, the Muslim wife and staff's experience with Matthew's Christian family exposed her to a unique kind of love, a love that is not bound by any social or religious barriers, a love that does not expect anything in return for what it offers, and the love that was poured out upon her when she was accused and rejected by everyone and was sought to reek of ugly crime, a bad scandal, and the smell of disgrace. Those who began to adore her after she came to live in Matthew's house love her because they recognize her true inner moral beauty and innocence. But Matthew's family supported her, bailed her out of prison, and based her in their conscience, in their confidence, and polished her with their love, gave her unconditional love from the beginning. The innocent Arab Muslim girl always returns love to Matthew's Indian Christian family with equal reverences. She imitates their way of life. She eats with them, sits with them, and plays with them. She did not consider their food to be forbidden or haram for her to eat, even though she knew that the lamb, beef, and chicken they cook were not halal meat. One day, the Muslim mother in Saf came and sat near the Christian mother, Mrs. Matthew, while the Indian woman was alone in her room, kneeling on her feet, praying to her Lord Jesus Christ. She sat close to her and closed her eyes and listened to her prayer. Then she opened her eyes and said softly to Mrs. Matthew, "Auntie." "Yes, my daughter," said Mrs. Matthew in a low voice. "Can I pray to your God?" "Yes, you can." "Can I pray to him without becoming a Christian girl?" "Yes, of course. God is love and loves everybody." God is love and loves everyone. He loves all people equally, whether they are Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, or even atheists. I have one request, and I want you to ask the Lord whom you worship to grant it to me. Of course, I can pray on your behalf, but you can also pray, and I will agree with you. God will still hear your prayers. Auntie, I have now been living in your house for more than a year, and I have noticed something important about you. What is this? You are so close to God. I believe that your God does not refuse any of your requests. The loving Indian Christian mother did not comment on the Sudanese Muslim mother's remark about her devotion to God. Instead, she smiled and patted her shoulder. "What is your request, my dear daughter?" And Safi smiled and said sadly, "Can you pray for my request, Auntie?" "Yes, I can pray to my Lord now and ask him to respond to your request. Whatever it may be, nothing is too difficult for the Lord. I want you to pray for my African husband, Dane. If he dies, I want you to ask your God to bring him back to life." The kind Christian Indian mother wiped the tears from her eyes before responding to the request of the Sudanese girl. "Okay, my beloved daughter, as I told you, nothing is too difficult for the Lord. Please close your eyes and join me in praying. The Muslim wife Insaf closed her eyes but could not prevent her tears from falling down her cheeks. The Christian mother, Mrs. Matthew, closed her eyes, knelt down, and raised her hand to the sky and began to cry. She cried for a long time before she raised her voice and said, "Thank you, Lord Jesus Christ, because you answered our prayers and gave Insaf's husband another life. Amen." This is how the Indian Christian mother concluded her prayer to her Lord. Amen, said the Sudanese Muslim wife Insaf, agreeing to her prayer request. Chapter 49. The rejected message from unwanted guests. The most beautiful time of the day for the Indian Christian Matthew family is after sunset. In the evening, all family members gather on the spacious rooftop balcony and have tea and snacks. They discuss the events of the day and other important family issues. This wonderful time will continue until 8 p.m. when the family members will have dinner together. After dinner ends, the members gather for prayer. After that, everyone goes to bed and sleeps. This daily practice has been part of Matthew's happy Christian family for many years. Although this practice is a daily routine, it does not feel like a monotonous religious ritual. Their evening Christian family group prayer is never limited to a boring ritual of prayer as Muslims do 5 times a day. The Sudanese Muslima girl Insaf participates and enjoys all the daily family affairs. The only activity she does not join is their Christian worship and prayers. Once dinner is over, the Muslima will quietly leave the balcony and go with her baby Deng Jr. to her room. The Indian Christian family does not burden her by trying to force her to participate in their spiritual life. Even on Sunday, when the Christian members go together to church, they will ask her to choose the best video of a recently released hit Indian movie and enjoy watching it. They never tried to convert her from Islam to Christianity or force her to go with them to their place of worship. This daily life continued for more than a year until the day came when the Muslima wife Insaf Salah al-Junaid asked the Christian mother Mrs. Matthew to pray for her late African husband Deng Majok Nasir. It was dusk when Insaf asked her good auntie to ask God to give her husband a new life. Shortly after the prayer, the family members gathered as usual on the balcony. It is a warm summer evening. The members sat 2 by 2. Mr. and Mrs. Matthew sat to one side. Their son Mark and his wife Lillian faces them on the other side. And behind the young couple were their 2 beautiful children playing together. Not far from the children, Insaf sat with the family's youngest daughter, called Emily. All members talked to each other, except the youngest daughter and the Arab wife. The two discussed Emily's secret love affair with her new lover. Every now and then, Emily and Insaf hug each other or clap their hands together while laughing. The Sudanese mother's 1-year-old son Deng Jr. sleeps in her room. Nothing can disturb such a beautiful time for the Indian family and the Sudanese guest who became their daughter. The Indian maid answers all phone calls or a doorbell rings. The phone and the doorbell rang frequently that evening. The milkman and the vegetable seller came to deliver their supplies and left. But no one paid attention to the phone callers or the visitors. It was only when the Indian maid walked onto the balcony and told Insaf that she had two African visitors. Don't go to them, Insaf, Mrs. Matthew said anxiously. Mark's wife, Lillian, responded, Let Mark go to them. Mrs. Matthew said to her son, If they are one of those boys who quarreled with her in the Bombay Criminal Court complex, send them away, Mark. Don't, don't encourage them to come here again either, Lillian said. Mark got up, followed the maid to the door. Mrs. Matthew asked the Sudanese wife, Do you know any African boys in this city? Insaf answered nervously, Not at all, Auntie. All the Sudanese students in town know her, but that doesn't mean they should come here and harass her, Emily said. Mark returned a short while later and said to the Sudanese wife Insaf, One of the boys said he had a message for you. A letter from whom? Asked Mrs. Matthew. He did not mention who brought the message. Come with me, my daughter Insaf, said Mrs. Matthew, speaking in a serious voice. The Sudanese daughter stood up and followed her Indian mother from the balcony to the house. They walked in silence until they reached the living room. Insaf saw the two African boys standing near the door. She couldn't recognize either of them, but from their appearances, she knew they are African Sudanese from South Sudan. She looked at them with a big question mark on her face. Mark, Lillian, Emily, and Mr. Matthew arrived in the living room and joined Mrs. Matthew and Mrs. Insaf. The two Sudanese boys are under the impression that if they do not speak up quickly and explain the purpose of their unexpected visit, the Indian family may either expel them or hand them over to the Bombay police. They saw that Insaf was also Indian and one of the daughters of the family. One of them said, My name is Longar and this is my friend Augustine. None of the family members responded to the African boy's introduction. They continued to look at them and wait for more information. Augustine has a message for Insaf, resumed Longar in a somewhat loud voice. Resumed Longar in a somewhat loud tune. Mrs. Matthew asked, Where's the letter? This is the message, Augustine said with a dry throat. Then he walked toward the youngest daughter, Emily, and presented her with the letter. He then continued with a soft words, This letter is for you, Insaf. Emily took the letter and looked at the foreign boy with a surprised face. Her mother asked, Have you ever seen Insaf before? No, madame, Augustine replied. Ma said to him while smiling, This is my Indian sister, Emily. Then Mrs. Matthew went to her daughter, Emily, and snatched the letter from her hand. The mother said seriously, Well, Insaf is not at home right now. When she comes, we will give her the letter. When Mrs. Matthew finished speaking, her eyes fixed on the two African boys with a look as if to say to them, Why are you still standing and looking at us? Augustine said, Well, my good auntie, is it possible for you to tell the Sudanese girl Insaf Salah al-Junaid, the wife of Deng Majok Nasir, when she returns, that if she wants to contact me, I currently live in the International Student Hostel in downtown Bombay City, near Chandigarh Station. But I will soon travel to the capital of India because I am studying in New Delhi University. Well, we'll see if Insaf wants to go to that hostel or see those bad foreign boys there, Mrs. Matthew said. Augustine was confused by Mrs. Matthew's words and did not understand what she meant because he was studying at the University of New Delhi. He wants to investigate the matter, but the angry face of the Indian mother scares him. Then his friend Longar took his hand and said to him in Arabic, "Let us go before these angry Indians fight with us, or else hand us over to the Indian police." As soon as Mrs. Matthew closed the door violently after the two foreign students fled the scene, Emily, Insaf, and Lilian burst into loud laughter. Mark clapped his hands and said to his mother, "Bravo, Mommy!" "My mother scared the two Sudanese boys to death," Emily said, still laughing. "I think if we look through the window, we could see them running away," Lilian said, also laughing. "Yes, if they come here again, I will hand them over to the Indian police," Mrs. Maddy said seriously. The Arab wife himself said, "I don't know who they are, and I don't want to see them again either." Then Mrs. Matthew shouted at her daughter, "Emily, take this letter, tear it up, and throw it in the trash." Bart shouted, "Wait a minute, Mummy. At least let the Sudanese girl in South see what is written in the letter they sent to her." "I think Mark is right," Lilian said. "Let us hear what they have to say in their letter." Emily was still laughing when she handed the unwanted message to Insaf. The Sudanese Arab wife took the envelope and looked at the written address. She saw her name beautifully printed in English. Then she said as she opened the envelope, "I think they wrote it to me in English because the two of them are African students who do not speak Arabic." Insaf wondered in astonishment when she saw the writing. "Oh my God, what a big letter these two young men wrote to me." Then she raised her voice and began to read the large letter. "To my beloved wife, Insaf Salah Junaid, it has been a long time since two Arab policemen violently separated us from each other in Khartoum city." Then the Arab wife Insaf threw the forbidden love letter into the air, ran to the Indian Christian mother. Mrs. Matthew embraced her and began to cry. Mrs. Matthew responded to her strong affection and hugged her tightly. The Sudanese Muslim wife Insaf said while crying, "I told you, my Christian mother, that your Lord will answer your prayers. My African husband Deng is not dead. He is still alive and has written this letter." The news of the amazing surprise was so wonderful that everyone hugged Insaf and wept with her. The Christian family members then moved to the balcony and asked the Arab Muslim wife to read aloud the letter of her African Muslim husband Deng. The many tears that continued to flow down her cheeks prevented her from seeing the words of the love letter clearly, and her trembling hands were unable to hold the paper. So she asked the Christian daughter, Emily, to read the letter to her. Then the Indian girl took the letter and began to read it out loud. "To my beloved wife, Insaf Salah Junaid, it has been a long time since two Arab policemen violently separated us from each other in Khartoum city. On that fateful day, an Arab policeman shot me in the chest. The bullet missed my heart by a few centimeters. God saved my life and allowed me to survive. When I regained my health after spending a month in Umdurman hospital, the police transferred me to prison. I've been accused of the crime of cohabitation and forbidden sexual intercourse between a man and his unmarried concubine and committing adultery with you. On the day of the trial, the Sharia court in Khartoum convicted me of illegal intercourse with my ex-wife Insaf, whose marriage was legally annulled by the Sharia court judge. Then the judge of the Khartoum Islamic Court ordered that I be flogged with 100 lashes. On Friday afternoon, they brought me near Umdurman Mosque and tied me with ropes to an iron bull. It was very painful and very humiliating to be flogged by two executioners in front of a large crowd of people. I lost consciousness before the executioners had finished half the flogging. However, they continued to carry out the punishment and beat me while I was half dead until they completed 100 blows. My body was then transferred from the Grand Mosque to the civil hospital for an autopsy. If it had not been for my father's objection, the hospital's doctors and nurses would have killed me inside the autopsy room. My father forced the civil hospital staff to agree to transfer my presumed dead body to the military hospital. When my lifeless body arrived there, I received proper care and miraculously escaped that fatal punishment. A few months later, I was sent to London, UK, for spinal surgery. The surgery was not very successful. I am now a disabled man who moves in a wheelchair. My mother and I returned to the UK for the same surgery, but it wasn't that successful either. My African father plans to send me back to England for a third major surgery on my spinal cord, along with my Ethiopian mother. By dear Saf, for a very long time, I tried to find a way to contact you. I have written you many letters and sent them to my cousin Christina's address. I did not know about the drug smuggling charge until the bearer of this letter came to my house and told me about it. I'm deeply sorry for what happened to you in Bombay. I did not know that Christina was involved in such an illegal act. Augustine did not tell me much about you. He lives in New Delhi city and studies at the university there. He stated that you are still on trial and in prison in Bombay. I pray to God to save you from this malicious conspiracy that my criminal cousin Christina has involved you in. I tried to find out more about our child who was in your womb the day you escaped, but Augustine knew nothing about him. I hope you have given birth to our first child and that he is still safe with you. Please write to me and tell me more about your life there. I need some time before I can fully regain my physical strength and come and join you in India. Now I live with my parents in the Riyadh neighborhood, and I wrote their address and cell phone numbers on the back of the envelope. Finally, I want you to remember that our love is eternal. Neither race, nor color, nor tribe, nor death, nor distance, nor imprisonment can separate us from each other. Yours forever, Deng Majok Nasir. Chapter 50. A Muslim girl wearing a cross around her neck. On that wonderful evening, the happy Muslim wife in Saf prayed with Matthew's Christian family for the first time. Not only did she pray with the Indian Christian family, but she rejoiced and thanked God because he had answered her prayer request through the compassionate mother, Mrs. Matthew. On that beautiful day, Mark, Lillian, Emily, and Insaf stayed up late into the night. Then the Arab girl told them the exact details of her tragic love story with her African lover. That day happened to be a Saturday night. On Sunday morning, the Sudanese girl, Insaf, went to church with her Christian family for the first time in her life. No member of the Indian Christian family forced her or asked her to come with them. She is the Muslimah who willingly decided to go to their place of worship and pray to their Lord Jesus Christ because he answered her prayer for her beloved African husband Deng. After Sunday Mass was over in Bandara Church, Mrs. Mahdi took Insaf to a jewelry store and asked her to choose the gift she would like to receive. The lovely Arab wife has chosen a beautiful golden cross. It is made of pure gold, and Saf was overjoyed when her Indian mother tied the gold chain around her neck, kissed her right cheek, and then hugged her lovingly. My beloved mother, I will never remove this cross from my neck, Insaf said, with a strong feeling of gratitude, while tears of joy flowed from her beautiful eyes. I will keep it as a memory of your love for me. When she said these words, Insaf pressed the golden cross to her chest until she felt she felt until she felt it had entered her heart and freed her. Then she blessed the cross on her sweet lips and kissed it affectionately. That Sunday, the Christian mother, Mrs. Matthew, her Indian son Mark, and her Sudanese daughter Insaf decided to go to the university's residence for international students to meet the good African boy, Augustine, who brought this good news about the husband Dane. This university accommodation for international students is for males only. Foreign female students have a section designated for their accommodation in the hostel of the St. Xavier's Christian College, affiliated with the University of Bombay. The beloved Arab wife wants to know more about her beloved African husband, so the student Augustine. She left her little boy Deng Jr. to play with Lillian's children. At 5:30 p.m., Mark's new luxury Mercedes stopped in front of the International Student Hostel. It is a habit of foreign students that whenever a beautiful young Indian woman walks in front of the gate of the International University Hostel, they stare at her and lust after her sexy body until she disappears. Some of them whistle at her, and some of them harass her with lustful words, and some followed her like stray dogs following a beach. Some of them even go to their rooms or washrooms and masturbate and will wish upon fucking her mental image in their minds. But none of them could dream of establishing a love relationship with her or marrying her, no matter how rich and highly educated he is. This is because an Indian girl may love a dog or marry a pig, but she will not fall in love or marry an African foreign student. As soon as the foreign students saw the beautiful and sexy girl in Saf, they started their bad habit. She's wearing skinny jeans and a small sleeveless t-shirt. Her beautiful eyes and sexy body lit a fire inside the bodies of these foreign students. They thought she was an Indian girl. They would never know who she was because she was white and had very long hair. No Arab girl from northern Sudan has ever worn jeans and a sleeveless shirt like her. It is against the law in Sudan for a girl to dress like a boy. A girl will be flogged on the bottom with 53 lashes if she is caught wearing pants and shirt. And if she does it again, she will be flogged 80 lashes and thrown behind bars indefinitely. Even Christian girls from South Sudan are not allowed to wear pants and shirts. Every woman and every girl must cover her hair with hijab or a niqab and cover the rest of her body with an ibaya and a Sudanese sari. When they saw in Saf, at least 10 Northern Sudanese boys approached her and wanted to help. One of the Sudanese Arab students said lustfully, "Excuse me, miss, did you come to meet someone at the hostel?" Insaf identified the speaker as a Northern Sudanese based on his Arabic accent and thus ignored him. The foreign student was disturbed by the unfriendly nature of the beautiful Indian girl. Then the Arab girl in Saf followed the Indian son Mark and his Christian mother, Mrs. Matthew, into the international hostel complex. Some foreign students followed behind the visitors until they saw them entering the hostel cafeteria. They rarely saw an Indian girl inside that university dormitory that the foreign students had turned it into the cave of Alibaba and 45 thieves. One of the northern Sudanese students shouted to his friend who was sitting inside the cafeteria and caught his attention. The boy said in Arabic, "Oh, Mamoon, look at the beautiful Indian girl approaching you. God willing, tonight she will be naked and lying in your bed under your body and with big cock inside her tight pussy." "Amen, Lord of the worlds," the other Sudanese boy replied when he saw the beautiful and sexy girl enter the cafeteria. "Look at her legs, thighs, and hips, but also see her half-exposed breasts and tits. When she passes you, look at her big ass like Mount Kilimanjaro." This short, lustful exchange promoted many other Sudanese students to look lustfully at Insaf. They look at her sexy body as she walks in front of them, like hungry wolves who have spotted a stray deer. The beautiful Arab wife felt those degrading words as if they were a stone that hit her head and a dagger that entered her heart. They reminded her of the obscenities she heard from the bad Northern Sudanese Arab student in the criminal court. She tended to turn her back and shout her anger at the student who described her with those lascivious, vulgar words. However, because of the respectable Indian mother and her polite son Mark, Insaf suppressed her righteous anger within her heart. But her tears again rolled down her cheeks as they had done before in the Bombay Criminal Court. Before Insaf could reach the table where several Sudanese students from South Sudan were sitting, a Sudanese Arab student from North Sudan approached her and inquired about the purpose of her visit. The Arab wife Insaf said in Arabic to the Sudanese student who spoke to her, "I think if I needed your help, I would have talked to you before you asked me to." The Sudanese student was extremely surprised and shocked when he heard an Indian girl speaking to him fluently in Arabic, and that is Sudanese accent. Then his keen eyes were able to see beyond the sleeveless shirt and shorts that Insaf was wearing. His memories returned to that day when Insaf assaulted the Northern Sudanese student in the criminal court who accused her of being a prostitute and a dirty drug dealer, promoting her to throw her high heel at his face and gouge out his left eye. As a result, he moved away from her as if she were a poisonous Indian cobra that might sting him with her tongue at any moment. Then he turned his back and ran out of the cafeteria and fled as if fleeing from the daughter of the accursed devil, Satan, who was chasing him with a sharp dagger in her hand. However, he returned a few minutes later, followed by dozens of Sudanese Arab students. In a short time, the cafeteria hall became crowded with many Northern Sudanese students. By then, one of the Southern students had told Insaf that Augustine had gone out but would be back soon. When the Indian Christian mother saw that many foreign students were surrounding them, she asked her son in a loud voice, "Why are these foreign boys gathering around us like this?" Mar answered his mother, "Wait a minute, Mom. The Indian son understood every word that the Sudanese students spoke about Insaf in Arabic because he learned the language of the Arabs during his frequent business visits to the Arab Gulf countries. Despite this, Mar pretended not to understand their language. Look what she is wearing around her neck, one northern Sudanese student shouted. She wears the cross that infidel Christian girls wear, one of the students replied in amazement. This is the last thing she should do, said one of the other Sudanese Muslim boys. Another Muslim boy quipped, what do you expect from a dirty whore and a notorious drug dealer? While the Sudanese Muslim students were surrounding the Indian visitors and commenting on Insaf's golden chain that hung from her neck so that her cross swung above her semi-exposed sexy breast, a student with a thick beard forced his way through the crowd and stood in front of the Sudanese Muslim girl who dared to wear the cross of the infidel Christians. His presence made all the northern Sudanese students calm and silent, as if he were Mr. President of Sudan. He looks at Insaf with eyes from which sparks of uncontrollable resentment and anger fly. He is breathing hard and his body is sweating and trembling. Then he opened his mouth and said to her angrily, listen, woman, I'm the leader of Ansar al-Sunnah al-Muhammadiyah. I am also a Sudanese Arab citizen from the city of Gadarif. I personally know your father, the Honorable Muslim brother Hajj Salah al-Junaid. He is one of the most biased and righteous Arab Muslim men in our Islamic group, committed to the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. May God bless him and grant him peace. Based on your origin and lineage, I just want to ask you one question in front of all these Sudanese Muslim students. Why do you wear this cross around your neck that only an infidel Christian girl wears, as you are now? Insaf decided not to answer his question, but she continued to look at him as if he were a predator in other people's affairs. However, she was not afraid of him and did not move her eyes from his face. That means all those rumors I hear about you are true. You live in a Christian house of infidel Christian Indians, and you have sold your Islamic religion for the sake of the fleeting pleasure of this world. The Arab wife remained silent because she saw him as a parasite who had come to spoil her happy day in which she visited the church for the first time and received the expensive gift of the Golden Cross from her good Christian Indian mother, Mrs. Matthew. Do you know what we should do to a Muslima girl like you who spoiled Sudan's pride name and brought shame to us? We must return her to Sudan as quickly as possible. When she arrives there, she must be tried before the Sharia court, convicted and hanged to death for her apostasy from Islam and turning into an impure, infidel Christian woman. Insaf remained silent and looked at him angrily. The religious leader understood her silence as a cowardice and fear of him. Then he extended his right hand and tried to grab the cross, pulling out from her chest, throwing it to the ground, spitting on it, and then stabbing on it with his dirty shoe. His hand could not hold the gold cross, but rather wandered around Insaf's chest and touched one of her half-naked big breasts. She put herself back, raised her right hand as much as she could above her head, and brought it down forcefully on the leader's face. The closet cafeteria hall amplified the echo of her powerful slap. Every foreign student heard it as if a bomb suddenly exploded. A dead silence followed. One could hear a pin drop. The religious leader of Al Ansar Sunnah held his cheek with one hand. His red eyes sent a spark of anger toward his insaf. His fleshy, fat cheeks became swollen and red with intense anger. His teeth grinned together to relieve the pain of the incredible humiliation he was subjected to at the hands of an apostate Sudanese Muslima woman who had converted to Christianity and become an openly infidel Christian girl. She is also an Arab girl accused of drug smuggling and prostitution. His plump lips protruded and formed a perfect circle, and his eyes filled with tears, but like a man, he refused to cry in front of his, of his of the audience. All the students of North and South Sudan expected the same reaction from the leader of Ansar Sunnah al-Muhammadiyah. He roars like a wounded lion or a grunts like a raging camel and jumps over the apostate Muslima girl who became an infidel Christian woman and tears her into pieces like a wild beast tearing the flesh of helpless prey. However, the religious leader opened his vile mouth and issued his religious fatwa. This cloth that you wear around your unclean and defiled neck, and the slap you gave to my pure and holy face will cost you your life. Then he turned his back and left the cafeteria, while several bearded Sudanese Arab foreign students followed him.